Hello and welcome to Sideways. I'm indoors today, just taking the Christmas tree down and putting the decorations away after a season that's so full of expectation. And this week, that's what we're talking about. The expectations we have of ourselves and other people, and how they sometimes prevent us from experiencing the levels of contentment that we'd really like. We explore the dangers of assuming other people are mind readers, and why it matters to remember that not everyone sees the world the way that we do. There's some discussion about the unseemly haste with which some of us remove Christmas decorations, a bit of Star Trek talk, and we ponder the notion of running to Charles Dickens' greatest hits. Expectations. Good morning.
There we are. How are you doing?
I was just watching some people take photographs of the yarn-bombed postbox outside the house.
Oh yeah. It's a good one, isn't it? It's a constantly changing one as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it's got a snow scene on there at the moment.
Has it?
Santa Claus and a Christmas pudding, a gift, Christmas tree, some holly. Yeah.
So it's very relevant at the moment. Although it's time for them to come down at some point, I suppose. If it comes down on the 12th day of Christmas, that'd be.
Yeah. What date is that? I always forget whether that's the 5th or the 6th.
Yeah, I always think it's the 6th.
I think it's the 6th. I'm gonna. Yeah. I don't take my. I saw someone yesterday. Actually, it was a couple of days ago. What date is it today? 2nd. Carrying a Christmas tree down the road. I don't understand that. The unseemly haste with which people want to get rid of their Christmas decorations. What's that all about?
I don't know. They want it out of their lives, especially if they've got to go back to work, I suppose. It's the season's over.
So do you think people do it to avoid the sadness of having to confront the end of the Christmas season?
I do, yeah. I think it's get it out of sight, out of mind. Or better still, just don't put one up in the first place, and you don't have to suffer that.
Yeah, well, I'm not engaging with you on that on that front. I think, if you're one of those people who wants to take down your Christmas decorations early, then you should go back and listen to some of our previous episodes on facing your emotions.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
If you want to experience the delirious highs of the Christmas season, you have to accept the slight sadness at it all being over.
There's always an equal and opposite reaction, isn't there, to these things?
Exactly. I always used to feel like that after when I did a lot of amateur dramatics in my younger days.
Yeah.
I always used to feel very sad after the end of that. It was a real big come down. You know, you kind of work for something for months and months and months, and then you get the euphoria of performing it. So obviously thunderous applause every night in my case. and then it was all over. It's quite difficult. But it's character building, I reckon.
Yeah, you're right. I think you can become sort of addicted to that polite ripple in the local village hall that you used to experience. Yeah, I'm sure.
Did you get a polite ripple in a village hall ever?
Anyway, should we start to crack on?
I can see that you want to.
Well, do you remember last week's episode? Because we did Don't Judge a Book by its cover, didn't we? And we mentioned that we briefly touched on that in one of our previous episodes on assumptions. Mm-hmm. And also it's quite coincidentally also in that episode we did touch on what we want to talk about today, which is one of your ideas, was expectation. But just before we start, it is our first episode of 2022.
It is.
So
Happy New Year.
It would be right to wish your listeners a Happy New Year, wouldn't it? And a safe and prosperous one.
Oh, prosperous we're going with now, are we? Last week we went with safe and peaceful.
Okay, well, I'm just thinking about Spock. You know, he'd say live long and prosper. So if Spock says it, then I'm all right with it, to be honest.
Yeah, but of course Spock was notoriously unemotional.
He was, yeah.
So it's not really going to. That's not going to chime with me.
No. His level of expectation was totally built upon logic. So we'll come back to that in a minute.
I think I'm more Scotty or Lieutenant Uhuru.
I can see that you'd fit nicely into either of those roles would suit perfectly. Anyway, did you see I don't know if you ever watched Two Doors Down, but that's a comedy you ever get
like it a lot. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, and the Christmas special was on, And I wasn't quite sure if it was a repeat of last year's, because I don't remember seeing a Christmas special or not, but it was quite up to date because it was mentioned COVID and that sort of thing. But there's a lady on there called Kathy she's always getting tipsy. She's always drinking. And there was an excellent illustration in the Christmas special about just how defensive drinkers can get when you're confronted by it, if someone mentions it to you. And it did make me laugh, but there was a sort of a serious note under that, because I thought, I sort of remember starting to do that when people were noticing and making sort of slightly comic remarks, but they were cutting and quite hurtful, really. And she got very defensive about it, and it's ruined the whole day effectively. And there's long periods where they weren't talking to each other. So I thought as a comedy, it stands up well. But there's a good little bit of social comment in there as well. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's funny actually, because with Two Doors Down, as much as I like it, I sometimes find it almost too awkward to watch.
There are those awkward moments in it.
Yeah, I think it is, as characters go, it is Kathy, that she's the one that really causes the most discomfort for me. I find her she's so kind of overbearing. And funnily enough, in keeping with today's topic, her expectation, which I'm sure is something we're going to cover, but her expectation is that everyone should see the world the way that she does.
Yes, you're right. And I think that once she throws a lot of drink into the equation as well, she gets a little bit more vociferous in her approach to that. Yeah. And it's typical. It's because, over Christmas period, obviously remaining sober myself, but being around people from time to time that do start to drink or have a little bit to drink, I can see people change from day one, and their attitude changes right from that very first drink. And you can see it more sharply when you're in recovery, but it is strange how the most mild-mannered person can suddenly become very opinionated. And I think Kathy in that program illustrates that very well.
Do you think people people who are drinking around you, do you think they ever worry about being judged by you?
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they'll almost get the first blow in by saying, "Oh, I'm only going to have a couple tonight," or something like that, just to set the scene. So yeah, they are, and so I'm always quite careful. I don't like to be evangelical, and I always make a joke of it myself. So hopefully, I'll put people at rest, and it's something that comes up a lot in groups, really, because we don't want to inflict our condition on those people around us. They can do what they want, but people can find it a little bit uncomfortable, which, we've had people complaining in groups that they stop getting invited to places because of exactly that situation. And it did take me a while before I felt comfortable enough to be around people that were drinking, and also that they felt comfortable that they weren't going to drag me back to my old ways, which is also a reason why people don't get invited sometimes. Okay. Anyway, that's not what I was going to talk about, but it's an interesting point. Going back to the subject matter then, expectations. Yeah. There's a phrase that came up when I was doing my research, but it was also one that comes up quite a lot in the 12-step programs when you go to fellowship meetings. And it was one I remember hearing a long time ago. I didn't really understand it at first. But the phrase is, expectations are premeditated resentments.
Feels like it's a bit harsh. I kind of understand it. I think probably in some cases I'm sure that is true, but I'm not sure it's the case always, is it?
Not really, but it's quite an interesting, because I didn't really know what it meant. I always pondered upon it and thought, what are they trying to get at there? It was explained to me that, we hope for something to happen, and then we get upset when it doesn't happen. But we've already built into the fact that we're going to be pissed off when it doesn't happen. We've already built that resentment in, especially with other people. Especially if you expect something of other people, don't tell them that you expect it of them, and then get upset when it doesn't happen. So we've premeditated their resentment, and that fits in quite neatly into an addict's way of thinking. Yeah,
you see it a lot in intimate relationships as well. So, some I can think of times when I've worked with couples, and I might say to one or other half of the couple, you have to say that, you have to state that. And sometimes people feel that it is in some way diminished if you have to tell your partner what you want, which is ridiculous. The whole idea of someone being able to read your mind and know exactly what you need is bizarre. I think, I think the other thing to remember with that is that when you tell someone what your expectation is, that doesn't automatically guarantee you're going to have that expectation met. No, but if you don't tell someone what you expect, then don't be surprised when they don't meet it.
Well, exactly. But it allows you, if you don't tell someone what you want or what you expect, it does allow you then to build in that premeditated resentment. So it's not a good sign in a relationship if you're doing that, is it really?
No, it isn't. No.
But there's another phrase that crops up a lot in recovery meetings as well around this subject, and that is you can't keep doing the same thing and expect a different result. Which, you know, when people keep relapsing, it's down to the fact really they're expecting their life to carry on in exactly the same manner, make no changes, and just put into the equation that they're going to just not be drinking anymore. And then they relapse and do exactly the same thing. They don't change. They don't try anything different. And which is why we always encourage people to try the different, you know, fellowship programs, and smart recoveries and online programs, peer support groups, to find the route that's right for them.
That kind of references something that we've spoken a lot about in terms of kind of broader therapy and people coming into therapy for whatever reason they come in. And that is that people don't change until they're ready to. And so if you continue doing the same thing over and over and over again, as people do, and then they feel guilty about the fact that they're, you know, still doing the same thing, still getting the same results, still being unhappy, it can become kind of very, very frustrating for them. But, you know, people don't change until they're ready for whatever the consequence of that change might be.
Exactly. Yeah, you can't drag people along, can you?
No. But certainly in therapy, I think sometimes people come to therapy hoping that they will be changed.
Oh, right. Okay.
I think that I expect some people probably go into recovery and rehab and go along to support groups and think, well, something's going to happen to me here, but nothing can happen to you. You have to make something happen for yourself. As your expectations of yourself adjust, and as your expectations of the world around you change, you will be supported in that change, but it won't happen if you don't initiate it.
No, exactly right. I mean, you're given the tools to help you make that change, but the tools on their own won't. You know, you can have all the tools and all the materials to build a wall, but it won't build it itself, will it? Yeah, no. You got to put the work in to do it.
In that sense, one could say that you and I are tools.
It's often been said, mate, isn't it? Anyway, yes, good points there, though. Very good points you've made there. And I think that when I was doing some research on this, I was looking at the, which I'm sure you'll be able to fill me in on some of the gaps on the psychology of expectation. Where do you think I ought to have? What would have been my first port of call? Do you think when I'm looking about the psychology of expectation?
Let me think for a moment. Just a stab in the dark. I'm going to go with Psychology Today.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It always comes up on the Google search when you're doing your research. They're a broad church.
There are other sites, don't you? Apart from that, it's not the one that you have to go to.
No, I don't, and it's not the one I do. I go to several different ones, but they seem to be the ones that come up with in a succinct presentation which suits our purposes. I think.
Okay, good.
Anyway, there's a couple of points that they made. I wanted to run by you really. Mm-hmm. First one was about merely expecting something to happen will not make it happen, which we've already sort of touched on there. And I was reading this bit in one of their articles about developmental psychologists have noted that children often believe their thoughts can directly cause things to happen. We've all done it to our siblings, and we hope they fall off their bike. I hope something happens to them. You know, if we think it hard enough, it's going to happen. And it was originally thought that we outgrow that by sort of the age of 7. But there was further studies, and this report was talking about that many normal adults continue to engage in various forms of sort of magical thinking as throughout their lives. And it's a slightly contentious point, I suppose, but they cited prayer as being a form of magical thinking. Mm-hmm. And I probably best not to have a sort of a theological discussion here on prayer, but it illustrates that style of purpose, that style of thinking going forward, even in our adult lives. Yeah.
I think what tends to happen is that certain events, at certain times in our lives, we might resort to magical thinking. So, funnily enough, I'm reading a book at the moment called The Year of Magical Thinking, by Joan Didion, who died recently. And it's all about the period of her life after her husband died from a sudden heart attack. And so when we're grieving, when something's happened in our lives that we desperately didn't want to happen, it makes absolute sense that we would then fall back on magical thinking. And we'd start to think about how we want things to be, how we wish they weren't the way that they were.
Yeah, and yes, and I think we are all, I was going to say, use the word guilty of that, but I suppose to a certain extent it's a natural tendency, isn't it, to rest on that, or to not rely on magical thinking, but to use it almost as a form of comfort. We can't think, events to happen in their life. We can't attract them in just by thinking about them, can we? We have to put in the work, as we said right at the top of this
episode. I mean, that's the theory of the law of attraction, which, I mean, I know a lot of people, set a lot of store by that. Personally, I think it's a load of old rubbish, but I don't believe you can adjust the world with your thoughts. I think what you can do is you can use your thoughts and the way that you perceive a situation to make you feel differently about something. But I don't believe you can change something just by thinking it. No, you can't. No, I don't think it's, there's no evidence, is there, that can happen. So do you reckon then we have a natural tendency to pin our hopes for happiness on fulfilled expectations? Yeah, definitely.
Because we've got to have good reasons to think that those expectations are going to be met, though, haven't we? And I was just thinking, if we expect something to happen without good reasons, particularly if we've got expectations of other people, for example, especially if they're unrealistic expectations, those are not going to be fulfilled, are they? And it's a route to constant unhappiness, isn't it?
Well, I'll describe for you a little model that I use in my work here, if you like.
Excellent.
which may or may not be helpful. We all live our lives in two worlds. There's the world in our head, which is where everything happens the way that we want it to. And that might be on a macro or micro scale. Every conversation we go into, every situation we go into, every circumstance, there's something in us that says this is the way I want this to play out. And obviously, if everything happened in our lives the way that we imagine it happening in our heads, then it would be okay. Life would be pretty easy. But apart from that world, we also live in another world, which is the real world, where things happen the way that they happen. And so sometimes things will happen the way that you anticipate them, which is great. And sometimes things will happen in a way that you didn't anticipate, that is difficult for you and painful. And when there is a difference between the way things happen in your world and the way things happen in the world, you only have two possible choices. One is, can you change the way that the things have happened in the world to make it look like you want it to look? Sometimes you can do that, but often you can't. So if you can, and you can change the situation so that it kind of feels more comfortable, that's okay. That makes you feel okay. But more often than not, you can't change the way things have happened. And then you have to accept the way things are. And that's where the problem comes. Because if you can't make it look the way you want it to look, and you refuse to accept the way it does look, then you're going to suffer. And that's where expectations trip us up, because we kind of have an expectation of the way things happen. It doesn't happen that way. And then we essentially say to ourselves, well, that's it. I'm not accepting that. It must be the way that I want it. It must be according to my expectations. Then you're in trouble.
We've talked about it in the past, the serenity prayer that's used in all fellowship meetings. It illustrates that very well, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
It is. I mean, it's it just find it, when I was writing these notes and thinking it through, I think most of if I was looking at expectations and them being upset and they're not fulfilled, it's normally around other people. And I think perhaps it comes from from my addict past, where everyone else was to blame. My drinking was not my issue; is that everyone else was causing it, and a lot of my fellow addicts would recognise that. It's it's everything else is against us, and we fight against everything, and we're starting from a bad place, and it's inevitable where I got to, and all this sort of thing. And I think that the expectation of other people, which again we can't make people do stuff. We can't if we don't, especially if you're in a relationship with someone and you're not telling that the lines of communication aren't very good, and you're expecting things of them which don't happen, it's inevitable that we get pissed off, isn't it?
It is, but two things. One, it's important for us to remember that other people don't see the world that we do. So
True.
The way other people see the world, the way other people perceive it isn't right or wrong. It just is. That's just the way it is, right? So our interpretation of a situation is just our reality. It isn't the reality. But the other thing is, I'm quite surprised to hear you say that. I would have expected you to say that the expectations that give you the biggest trouble are the expectations you have of yourself.
They've adjusted over the years. I think, it's become much more acceptable. I've become more accepting of my own fallibilities and what I expect from life than I ever had done before. I never really met my own expectations in the past, but I do now.
Well, maybe you've also adjusted your expectations of yourself.
Yeah, I have. Quite dramatically.
Yeah, because if you when again we've done a whole episode on this. When you have perfectionist tendencies, that's another example of your expectation of yourself being terribly damaging.
Yeah, I don't say I'm never down on myself or pissed off with my own behaviour, etc. That's always going to be there. It's just I've just found that, and again I've addressed that now. But I used to just blame other people and have higher expectations than of other people than I should have done, and felt let down when they didn't do what I expected them to do.
Well, it's funny because when I was thinking about expectations, going back to that point about the difficulty being the meaning we kind of derive from our expectations. So to give a simple example, you expect me to get the number convention right on the episodes, right? Which is a perfectly reasonable expectation. And it would be possible for you, I'm not saying you do think this, but it would be possible for you to think on all the numerous occasions where I've failed to get it right and I've messed it up, it would be possible for you to interpret that as an indication that I don't care. Whereas actually, it's just that I'm a bit sloppy and chaotic. It has absolutely no bearing on, how I feel about the podcast, and certainly no bearing on how I feel about you. It's just kind of me. It doesn't matter to me as much as it matters to you. I mean, it's easier now because on the hosting site, they remind me which the last episode was. So it's very difficult for me to get it wrong now.
So when I spoke to them about that, they put that right then. That prompt asked them to give you.
that's an example of where, sometimes our inability to recognize and remember that other people don't see things the way that we see them. It then becomes very easy for us to think, oh, well, you obviously don't respect me. You don't care about me. It doesn't matter to you what I want. I don't know how we got there. How did we get there?
I'm not really sure, but I think it's an interesting point about, about expectations overall, because there's a little quote I just wanted to sort of end my notes with, really. Before it's towards the end of it, to be honest. It's not Gandhi, no. It's again, it's an unattributed one, but it goes like this: expecting life to turn out the way you want it is guaranteed to lead to disappointments, because life will not always turn out the way you want it to. And when those unfulfilled expectations involve the failure of other people to behave the way you expect them to, the disappointment also involves resentment. Which is what I was trying to illustrate, being what I was saying.
That's true. It's absolutely true. We can all agree that one of the things that we all share is the desire to feel happy in our lives, to feel happy and content, right? So that's something you and I share and everybody else listening. But where things differ are the circumstances that we require in order to allow ourselves to feel happy. So, for example, if you wake up in the morning and your criteria for happiness is to say, well, everybody has to do the things that I want them to do. Everybody has to meet my expectations. If that's what you need in order to be happy, you are not going to be happy. Whereas if my expectation is, well, if I wake up in the morning and I've got another day, that'll do me, then I'm pretty guaranteed to experience quite a lot of happiness. So everybody listening is somewhere on that spectrum. It's either enough for you just to be alive, or you have very exacting expectations of the world and the people in it. And depending on where you are on that spectrum, you're either going to experience a good deal of happiness and contentment, or you're going to really struggle for it.
Very wise. And I think you're right. I mean, most people in recovery count each day waking up as a bonus, because a lot of us have been on sort of short-term, almost like we've been on death row for a long time.
Yeah.
And when you come away from that, it's really nice. So yeah, I still treat every day as a bonus. So I don't have great expectations. Doesn't mean I'm sloppy about each day. I like things to happen. I like nice things to happen, but I don't have the same desires I used to have. I had to have a certain level of income coming in and a certain amount of nice stuff around me. So yeah, that's all changed. But
that is one of the great benefits, the great gifts of long-term recovery, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Certainly that's what I would observe. Of people that I've known that are in long-term recovery. Their whole kind of attitude and expectation of their life has shifted. And the simple things tend to mean a great deal more.
Oh, they do, yeah. And it's the little things in life that suddenly become very relevant. Things we've probably ignored. We miss stuff. We miss some of the simple things in life which are very rewarding.
Yeah.
But how do we, if we're looking at these, if we get into this cycle of expectation and failure and resentment, is there any sort of tips to get away from that?
I think we've kind of answered those questions as well as we can, because I think you have to remind yourself when you're disappointed in someone else that other people don't think the way that you do.
Yeah.
And that isn't necessarily because they don't care about you. In fact, it almost certainly won't be because they don't care about you. It'll be just because they see the world differently. We don't perceive the world in the same way. And if you can remind yourself of that, you kind of relieve yourself of a lot of resentment that you would potentially hold on to if you're thinking that, when we find ourselves thinking, well, I wouldn't do that. Well, that's dangerous because you're not doing it. Someone else is. Someone else who isn't you, who doesn't think the way that you do. So that would be the first thing. The second thing I think would be that point about ask yourself, what are your criteria for feeling happy? Everyone can do that now, listening to this. Ask yourself, what is it you need emotionally in your life, or even, materially, physically? What is it you need to make yourself happy? Because the longer that list of expectation, the more it relies on other people doing what you want them to do, the harder it is for you to feel happy. Whereas if you are someone who genuinely is glad to be alive, then you are going to feel more peace and more contentment. So that would be the next thing. And I think the only other thing is the one that you've mentioned there. Be clear with people about what you want. But don't think that just because you voice your expectations, you're going to get it. But do understand that without voicing them, you almost certainly won't.
Yeah, no, I think that seemed to come across when I was doing my research. That came up time and time again. It was the communications.
One final thing, though.
Go on.
And we haven't spoken very much about this, but don't have overreaching or extravagant expectations of yourself. You're all right.
Right, okay.
Not you, obviously. Not you.
No,
you're not all right, but
it was the royal you was using there.
It was. It was. I find myself saying this to people so many times. You're all right. You're okay as you are. You're okay as you are. I can't remember where it came up. It's somewhere recently. I was talking to someone about the desire to change, and it's an eternal truth that it's impossible to change until you accept yourself where you are right now. It sounds counterintuitive, but until you can say, okay, this is where I am, this is what's happening in my life, this is who I am today, that's okay. From that point, it becomes much easier to shift. It's very, very difficult to change if you're constantly saying to yourself, this is not all right, I'm not okay like this, I expect this, I expect that of myself. So kind of lighten up on yourself a little bit. That should be, I was going to say a New Year's resolution, but you know how I feel about those, so I'm not going to say that.
Yes, you and me both have a very low expectation of New Year's resolutions being fulfilled.
Yeah, they're bullshit.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. And I think that people have expectations, especially when they're built upon. We touched on it in the past in one of our episodes about jealousy. People are looking around them and see other people have got material goods which they haven't got, and they expect to have them themselves. And it leads to unhappiness when they can't, when they don't end up with those particular material goods, unless they go and steal them, of course.
Yeah, I took the dogs out yesterday on one of my favourite walks, which 364 days of the year, I would expect to see one, maybe two other people. And of course, because it was New Year's Day, everybody goes out for a walk on New Year's Day. It's like Boxing Day.
Yeah.
I found my expectations were dashed because I thought I'd go up there, have a nice walk, and it'll be, I'll be able to enjoy the views and have a bit of solitude. It was like flipping Piccadilly Circus. It was a disgrace. So I found myself harbouring resentment for other people who'd had the audacity to come and walk in a public space that I wanted to walk in.
Yeah. They didn't meet your expectations, did they? Have a nice, quiet time out?
No, they didn't. So I had to have a word with myself on the way back.
Yeah, you did. A bit of self-therapy, wasn't it?
Exactly. A little bit of self-reflection. Calm down a little bit, Graham. Other people have as much right to be here as you do.
Annoying as they may be.
Exactly.
So that's not going to be on your gratitude list then, the amount of people that were around on your doggy walk?
It isn't, but funnily enough, what's on my gratitude list does reference something that you mentioned earlier when you were talking about Christmas and you were talking about, sitting around watching a bit of telly and stuff. I've actually been grateful for the fact that for the large part of the Christmas holiday, the stuff on telly has been absolutely appalling, ghastly fair, and therefore it's encouraged me not to sit and watch television and actually go and do other things that I feel much better about, like, I don't know, reading or doing stuff around the house. So I'm actually very grateful for how appalling the TV schedules are this Christmas, because it's enabled me to get on with other stuff.
That fits in quite nicely, yeah, because you probably expected it to be a little bit better than that, but it's turned out that it was a lot worse, but the result was better. Well, I'm going to lead on from that then in that case, because my gratitude on my gratitude list is I was just so grateful that so many of my fellow recoverers made it through the festive period. Excellent. We had a meeting yesterday, a face-to-face meeting, which I was able to do down in town. And it was great to see people that have survived it, because there's a lot of worry and a lot of talk going on beforehand and a lot of concerned people. So it was lovely to see so many of us make it through.
There must be a great deal of a kind of almost like a collective sigh of relief after a holiday like the Christmas holiday, whether people are brand new in recovery or have a little bit of time under their belt. It must be a tricky time.
It is a tricky time, and it's watching people experience it for the first time that I've found inspirational. Yeah, because I've got that was my 11th straight sober Christmas, and it doesn't. Not to say I still don't have to be aware of what's happening, but it would be quite easy to slip into a comfort zone and let me guard down. So listening to people's stories and sticking closely by them over the festive period has been good for me as well. So yeah, I'm very grateful for the I suppose all the input that people have made onto the group chats and come to the meetings and the Zoom meetings to help each other through.
That's also relevant to the topic of expectation, isn't it? Because what you're describing there is that you still don't have, your expectation of yourself is still realistic. You still expect yourself to need a little bit of support, a little bit of help. You're not now over a decade into recovery, blasé about it, thinking that's all right. I expect myself just to be fine all the time. I think that diligence in terms of curating your recovery is what has led you to your 11th sober Christmas, isn't it?
It underpins it totally. Yeah, it does. It does. It's not taking things for granted, and continue to work on it. Continue to work on myself on that, and that keeps me in check, keeps me sober.
I had a sober Christmas as well, so why wasn't I invited to your meeting? Yeah.
Did you have a sober Christmas? Did you? Yeah.
I did, yeah.
Well, that's not unusual for you particularly, though, is it?
No, it isn't. No. Anyway.
But, yes, thank you. Thank you for that. I just wanted to briefly end up on just look at my Spotify search, as we normally do at this point of the episode. Yeah. Because there's several tracks. Well, Great Expectations came up. There's loads of those, but the one by Elbow, which is one I was familiar with, I rather like.
Charles Dickens.
Sorry?
Charles Dickens.
And Charles Dickens, yeah, he didn't. It probably is on an audio book, yeah, now. But
I'll tell you what, that would have been brilliant if you put that on the Spotify playlist. The entire audio book of Great Expectations. Someone's out on a jog and that comes on.
Well, it'd probably be quite nice to sit down and listen to it. I've never done that. In fact, I can't remember. I'm sure I have read the book in the past, probably at school, but I don't recall it now particularly. There's a track called "No Expectations" by the Rolling Stones, and it's from their Beggars Banquet album, and that one reminded me of my mum, because my mum was a big Rolling Stones fan, and she had the Beggars Banquet album, and it reminded me of that. But I'm not putting that one on because I come across a track called "The Expectations of a Fool." It's by an indie rock band from Doncaster called the Raytons. And I hadn't heard of them before, but when I clicked on that and listened to it, I thought, this is really good. I like these. I like this group a lot. And so I'm going to put their track on the Spotify list, and I shall continue to listen to more of their stuff. They sound quite exciting.
All right.
Good.
See you next time.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. And I'll see you soon, mate.
Yeah, see you later.
Bye.
Bye. Sideways was created by Graham Landy and Martin Pankhurst. If you want to read more about our work or sort through the extensive archive of past episodes, just visit grahamlandywellbeing.co.uk/sideways-podcast. You can follow us on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram at Sideways Podcast, and you can email us if you have a question or if there's something you'd like us to cover. But most of all, we want to tell you how grateful we are that you come and listen, and we ask that if you've enjoyed what you've heard, that you spread the word. And we'll see you next week.